Hi, Rowena.
Hi, Vince. Thought I'd come for a little bit.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I connected up and realised that my internet had dropped out. I had to reset it, and it takes a good 5 minutes for it to come back after it.
Oh, yeah. I know. Rebooting.
Mm. Well, I've got to reboot two boxes. I've got an NBN box as well as the router, and they were out, but rebooting fixed them. They looked like they were coming good. Mm. Well, here I am anyway.
Yeah, here you are. So.
Mm. And here we are at 7 a.m. Yeah. So interestingly, I continue to get good feedback on the YouTube channels and by email, but attendance dwindles down.
Yeah, I guess, you can never really tell. And it's hard to know. Are there a lot of new people that coming in? Because at one time there were so many people.
Yes, new people coming in. Well, I think mostly the new people came from Todd and Penella. She would recommend them and they would come. Mind you, there's over 300 on that notification list
Yeah.
that still want to be notified about the recordings and so on. I don't mind. Even if there's one, I'm happy.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's connecting through it's a different connection than everyday interaction, sort of through
Hmm.
a relative. Yeah, it's a chance to. Hmm.
Morning, Monique.
Good morning.
Or hello.
Hi, Monique.
Hi. Trying to change my name, but can't. I'm just drawing a blank all of a sudden.
Change your
participant.
name.
Participant. Just having the first name. I just found. I found it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, when I see your name, I think of danseuse, but it's how do you spell it? How do you say your name?
It's French, so it would be Dancours.
Dancours, yes, because so I'm
Dancours.
thinking, yeah, because I'm thinking of, I just see it and then I mispronounce it because I think,
Yeah.
oh, Monique the dancer,
Yeah, I
just
like to
because
dance.
I'm how sometimes one has, like, you read
Yeah.
things. I mean, I know how it is, but I choose to or somehow I misread
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, or sometimes you just have an impression.
Yeah.
And you don't even realize it. Just
That's right. It's like
becomes
when
the image.
they put words up and then they put sort of mix them around and
Yeah.
you can still read them.
Yeah. It's very simple spelling, but most people don't know how to say it.
Right.
I just prefer my first name for communication.
Yeah, me too. Well, I think all of us.
Keep it simple.
Well, welcome everybody. Welcome Michelle. Welcome Paul. Hello Paul.
Hi, Vince.
Haven't seen you in a long, long time. Yeah,
I know. Still around.
yeah, yeah. Good that you're here. Yeah. So tell us, how have you been going? What have you been up to with this stuff?
Well, I've been a bit tied up with family issues recently. Been getting me down a lot, but I won't talk about that. That's not why I'm here. I think one thing I've realised, I think was it Paul Simpson posted a video on the Facebook page.
Paul does, yeah, it's from time to time. Which one were you referring to?
It's one entitled "When You're Thinking, You're Actually Listening."
Oh, okay. I don't think I've seen that one. Yeah. Um, yeah. So
Uh,
what that one resonated with you, did it?
It did big time, yes. It did really big time. Because it's like Jed spoke about in his writings about distinction between the actor and the character. And I'm so caught up in the character of Paul, I can't sort of get out of it.
Right. What if it's not really a case of getting out of it, but rather allowing the emergence of a different character that relates to a different segment of life, kind of thing. So the character Paul, he's still useful. We're still going to use him every time we go down to the shops or every time we communicate with somebody. But there is another option in there as well, and it's an option that most people don't realise. So the way I put it is that there is the unreal world, which is the world of society, and it's very, very much built on ideals, which are concepts, just ideas. And that's the way language works, and that's the way most people work most of the time. And that is that they relate to these ideals, but they relate to them as if they were actual. And that's the trap. That's where the suffering happens. So there's a possibility that there is available to you experiencing of what I would call an actual world, which is a world of just senses, not thinking. Although it's impossible to separate those two completely, but essentially that other world is where the magic is. When you hear of somebody who wakes up and they tell you about that initial epiphany, they're talking about that other world, which is available to all of us as an uncorrupted human being, but not so when we believe that the only existence is in that conceptual, idealistic world. Does that make sense to you at all? Or was it
Yeah,
just,
I can see where you're coming from, Vince. I agree with what you're saying. But I think the reason this video resonated with me so much because I've experienced this sort of separation from the character. A couple of
yes,
times recently, I've sort of woke up in the morning in bed and lay there very content and peaceful, happy. I'm surprised. But I get up out of bed, walk downstairs, literally bang, bang, bang. The whole character of Paul comes back on top of me. It's like this huge weight
yeah,
as I come downstairs. I get to the bottom of the stairs, I'm depressed again.
yeah, yeah. I shouldn't laugh, but I mean, it's funny, but it's pretty serious stuff, isn't
It's
it?
true. It's true. I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah,
joking. Yeah. The thing
yeah,
I've experienced these little glimpses of like, what do you call it? No self or whatever.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
just brief glimpses. They're not permanent.
So you get the idea that as you're walking down the stairs, the character Paul kind of starts to become
That's
dominant
it.
in, yeah. And it's like this is what I think that the Buddha was talking about when he said reincarnation. This is you putting on the coat and becoming that character again. And most people don't realize they do that. You know, it's really fantastic that you've actually seen it happen. That is brilliant, because it gives you the. So what were you without the character Paul? You were real. You were
I was just,
accurate.
I was just aware, Vince. I was just aware. I wasn't anything. I didn't think anything. I was just aware.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'll tell you what's really happening too is that you're operating from your right brain. It's another part of the brain that's working when you're just aware. There's no judgment. There's no opinions about things. There is just, well, probably awe, if anything. Yeah, that's there. Yeah, yeah, interesting. So how do we consciously? Maybe that's one way to. Yeah, it's not quite right, but how do we how do we allow that aware Paul to be present at other times during the day? Or how do we not have to wear the character coat? That's the trick. Yeah.
It is a critique. So the more I monitor myself now, see, whatever I'm doing, when I'm walking or driving, there's this constant commentary in my brain criticizing and ridiculing. I don't like this, I don't like this. It's a constant, I constantly get away from it.
Yes. Yeah. That's the trick, isn't it? How do we getting away from it is not quite the right thing, but how does it not dominate?
It's
That's
being able to sort of step back and just view it rather than get engrossed into it, get pulled into it.
yeah.
I
Well,
had a very strong inner critic, and then I eventually realized that it was a. I mean, if you go from the concept of parts, that we have internal family systems, so it's like there are voices. There's different identities that you can call them, because the self is composed of different identities as much as we have all these different roles in life. So you can think of, and the inner critic, of course, is a superego. It's very imprinted because of society. It's very moralistic and judgmental, and can have parental sort of flavor. But it's a protection, and so telling it to go away, or just bypassing it and saying I refuse to listen, it doesn't like that. But if it can be engaged with in, oh, okay, I know. And my strategy was really, I mean, and still is anything that I think, oh, I'm resisting, that I don't want to be there, but I feel there's a resistance in it. I know it's protecting something more vulnerable underneath. And so it's like, okay, I know, what are you protecting, and sort of engaging, because somehow that allows a little bit of an unbinding to see what's more vulnerable underneath. And I really
I
found
hear
that
that.
that approach really was helpful, because I had a really very brutal, inner critic, judgmental part.
Well, I have that too, and that comes from my toxic parents, which I perfectly accept. I can live that. But this, we're talking about psychology. I'm looking outside of psychology. I'm trying to get
Well,
away from this
sometimes it's
self.
necessary,
Hmm.
because if you go straight into the no self, these are just my thoughts, that's bypassing,
Hmm.
because you can't separate psychology from spirituality. You just can't, because you're dealing with the psyche, the mind, which is psychology, and seeing what all these parts and everything that we have is really has some use, because it developed when we were very young to allow us to survive in life. So even if it's not a good strategy now, but it's a simple thing, it's a simple approach that one can really do easily for oneself. A little bit of psychology, and then you might notice just different sensations coming into the body, instead of like real tension. It can be a softening. And then you can, the softening will lead into the body, because as the more the body is tensing and resisting reality, as it were, I mean the big reality, then the more these thoughts, contraction creates this contracted space, and it's like a feedback loop. That's
Sorry, Rowena. I was going to say, I've noticed that Paul Simpson's just logged on, hasn't he? Hello, Paul. Were you the one who put that video on Facebook a few weeks ago?
I don't
Can you
think
hear me,
so. I
Paul?
mean, I have a few where I'm doing some commentary on Eckhart Tolle, but other than that, I don't think so.
Well, there was a Paul Simpson posted a video on the Facebook page. When you're thinking, you're
On
when you're
Facebook.
thinking, you're really listening. Did you put that video up?
Which one are you talking about that I put on Facebook? I put
It
quite a
was,
few in Vince's group, maybe.
the video was titled "When You're Thinking, You're Really Listening."
Oh yeah, that one where it has the skeleton hovering
That's
over the
right. Yes,
guy.
yes. I love that.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. I was telling Vince about it.
Uh,
I was
I
trying
don't
to
know how to
explain to Vince, but he hasn't seen the video.
Well, I thought I put it. What group did I put it in? I thought I put it in Vince's group, or was
It
it
was,
in
yes.
Unleashed?
It was
Okay.
in Vince's group on Facebook.
Well, it just kind of verifies what I harp on all the time, that the voice, there's the subtle belief that the voice is an agent, and it isn't. The belief that agency means that the agent has knowledge of the present, past, and the future, and the agent has the power to change things. The voice, this voice in your head that you say is criticizing you, it is not an agent. It has no knowledge of you or your past, present, or future, and it has no power to do anything, to affect anything. It's just a narrator. It's just the part of the brain that puts out speech. It's like a speaker on a scoreboard. You can sit there and listen to the speaker on the scoreboard in a football game. You would never say, wow, that speaker's really smart. But people will say, well, that voice that I am, it knows things and it knows how to do things. It doesn't. The voice knows nothing. Those are just thoughts coming out, and none of those thoughts knows anything. Nothing. No thought knows anything. So this voice in your head that's self-criticizing, it doesn't know anything and it can't do anything. None of those individual thoughts that come one after another know anything. So just it's like a parrot. So to take it seriously is the root of suffering, or the root of a lot of suffering. That's what the video is about, basically. You're basically listening to this voice in the head like it's somebody, and it's not. It's just.
There was something in that video that when Paul was listening to it, caused a shift for him. Right? So he had a major experience as a result of that, listening to that video. You want to tell us, Paul, what part of the video, not the video, forget the video, what was the message that impacted you so greatly?
That the voice isn't me. I'm listening to a voice. I've always assumed the voice is me. It's me thinking, me narrating.
Right. So there's something that's aware of the voice.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what clicked for me. I'm separate from that voice.
Yes.
Well, you even said a while ago, it's your parents. It's your parents' voice. You didn't grow up, become 4 or 5, 6 years old and start criticizing yourself. No kid does that. That's somebody
I got past my parents years ago. It's my own personal opinion, not their opinions.
Oh, is it?
Hmm.
Is it?
Yeah.
What is that opinion formed on?
I'm the opposite to what my parents are.
Well,
I've had plenty of
it's
time in
it's not
counselling over
only
the
your
years.
parents, it's your teachers, your brothers,
Well,
your
I've agreed with other people
sisters.
around me, yes. I don't want to get drawn into this toxic parenting nonsense or this healing the child within nonsense.
No, there's no healing the voice. The voice is, there's nothing there. It's not an agent. It has no power. It literally is not your voice, but you're listening to it. Same way
Yeah,
you
that's
listen
real.
to your parents, the same way you listen to everyone else.
That's the
That
realization that hit
realization,
me.
that
Yeah.
realization that it's not your voice, and it's not really your thoughts, because that's just your thoughts inside your head, whether you're hearing the thoughts inside your head, but that's not what you are. What you are is simply that which knows of that voice.
There seems to be a bit of a pivot point for Paul here, that he's adamant. You were quite adamant, Paul, when you said that it's not your parents, it's your own opinion uh, that you're experiencing. And what Paul Simpson's saying here is that that opinion is formed as a result of conditioning. It's all of the experiences that you've had in your life, and which is particularly the exposure to other people. And so up until we're, say, 3 years old, until we go to school, parents are the main one that influences. Once we go to school, the influence becomes the parents of other kids via the other kids. And so they then affect us, and we take in stuff that resonates with us and we reject stuff that doesn't, and we form our opinions in that way. But there's no original opinion that comes out of you. It seems like there is, but essentially it's always a result of a reflection of what you're exposed to most of your life. And the other thing that concerned me a little bit is that the amount of energy that you've got in your opinions about psychology or toxic parent rubbish and all that kind of stuff. I agree that there's a million different opinions about what they are and how valuable they are and that kind of stuff. I don't like the word spirituality. I think it's a load of crap. I think what we're talking about here is basic human stuff. But when we talk about basic human stuff, do you put a label of psychology on it? You could, but it's irrelevant. Doesn't matter. But when you look at somebody in the street and you go, I don't like them, I don't like, you have an instant aversion reaction. There's psychology involved, if you want to call it that. But there's, it's not really relevant to put a label on those things. Doesn't matter. What we're talking about is what actually exists for you, and that's the important one. Yeah. So that you saw that you were not your thoughts, that they were happening. And did you also see that there's a relationship to those thoughts? When before you had this shift, this realization that you weren't your thoughts, you probably thought that you were your thoughts.
Yes, I think I understand what you're trying to say. Yes,
Hmm.
the thing, what struck me is there was no me involved. It was just pure awareness.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Absolutely. What
Yeah.
an amazing thing. Yeah.
Briefly, very briefly.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
so frustrating when it slips away.
Yeah.
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 That's why I get a bit touchy about talking about psychology. I see it's a different subject. That's about Paul, not about the real awareness, if you like. I
Yeah.
see it being awareness and Paul. Paul is psychology. Awareness is not psychology.
Yeah,
You
I
see
get
what I
it.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I'm a bit
But the
touchy about
two
going to
somehow,
psychology route.
the psychology part is part of the greater part, and it's still,
I would disagree, actually.
relative world is still.
That's not how I felt. That's the part. There was the awareness. There was Paul. Paul is psychology
Yeah.
awareness. Yeah, just how I perceived it.
Yeah,
I found it so delightful.
for sure.
Yeah. Have you ever experienced that?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the thoughts are almost like an echo of somebody else or something else.
It
Often.
was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was the thoughts of Paul had gone.
Mm.
Of just awareness of the surroundings.
What I found was, this working because of having, like the moments of like, being very clear that has got nothing to do with that as a voice, but the working was through the voice, getting into tension in the body. Because even though I could see that had nothing, that was a voice, and those were sensations, somehow, because there wasn't a complete, over time, one can keep going back, but I wanted to sort of, there was a desire to sort of get deeper into the body and the sensations. And so engaging as that's not me, that's just a voice, or that's just a thinking, but it's a familiar pattern of thinking. It's just a virus, if you want, in the system, or however you want to imagine it, some sort of weird entity that's entered itself in through conditioning. But it's like, okay, I'm going to be interested, because if it's there, it must be serving, it must have been created at a certain time to serve some sort of purpose, like especially if you're a child and you risk doing something naughty, whether it's at school or whatever, and you've become fearful, and so there's the little part that's going to say, don't do that, and it's like a little tiny snowflake, and then over the years it becomes a great big snowball of don't do that, you haven't done that well. And so that was sort of that was the way that I sort of ended up approaching, just engaging with it in a sort of detached, sort of curious way to see, it's all a play. It's not real, and we know it's not us, but somehow it's just a different way of getting some unbinding of the loop.
Another thing I want to point out to you, Paul, is that as you got out of bed and walked out, you in the beginning you still hadn't put the Paul code on, the Paul character on properly, right? It was still partially or not on, right?
Yeah.
And let's say you got to the top of the stairs before you started to actually experience the Paul character coming back. Who was doing the walking and not walking into walls and finding their way through the doorway and all of that out to that point? There was no Paul there yet it was still happening, right?
Exactly, yes.
Yes. So this is another big realization. If you can just grasp the realization, the import of the realization that you don't need the Paul character to navigate your way through life. He's very useful when it comes to being in the shop or talking to somebody on the street or organizing or planning when that becomes necessary. But essentially, he's not necessary for life. He's useful at times, and that's all. Yeah.
That's what I realised in those few brief moments of walking from the bedroom down to the bottom of the stairs. But life seems to sort of reinforce this Paul character, all that's going on around, all the family issues and things to be done. You can
Yes.
just have space to get out of it.
Yep. And here's a really big one: language. Just the way we use language, the way our language is built, that reinforces the character as well. All
That's
the
right.
time. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
big one. Yeah. Oh, I don't know if I can convey to you the magnificence of that experience that you had. The import of that experience was just absolutely phenomenal. You know, that would be a shift that every spiritual seeker would just crave. Can I have that, please? And that was a good one. Yeah.
Can I have it permanently, please? That's what I'm after.
Well, there you go. That's another trick. You see, that's an expectation.
Yeah.
You're never going to have it permanently. Well, that's not right to say that either. But put it that way, it's you. You you can't live in blissland like that all the time. You've got to interact with other people. You've got to go down the shop and buy groceries. You know, those
Well,
are things
perhaps recently. Yeah.
that have to happen. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
perhaps I should reword it. Can I trigger it myself? Well, that's the mission. I can't
Okay.
trigger it myself.
Well, yeah. So that's another story, and that
Yeah.
is no. You're never
No.
going to get this with willpower. It's not something that you can do. No
No.
amount of effort is going to bring that on. In
Mm,
fact, it's the opposite of effort. It's being relaxed. It's being totally open and not directed in any way when that kind of thing will happen. And so this is
yeah.
what we look for. We look for this to reveal itself. And in the beginning, and we call, well, it's not really a beginning for you. You've been at this for a long time, but in the beginning of these experiences, it's going to come and go. And it will come when there's no effort to bring it. While ever you're sitting there wanting it, it's not going to be
Yeah.
there. So when you're mowing the lawn or working on your car, that's when it'll come. You'll suddenly find you'll go, look at these hands doing this job. I'm doing that bolt. You know, yeah, yeah.
Mm,
So Paul, you said um, you had a thought like I wish it would stay here forever, or if I wish I could do it myself. So who is the thinker of that thought? Who is the thinker that thinks it can do it for itself?
Well, I
Where
knew
is
as soon as I said that, I knew I was wrong. I can't trigger
Yeah.
that. It's me and mine. Yeah, all this
yeah
personal pronouns. You get confused, but yeah, not something
Right.
I
yeah.
can
So
trigger.
where is the listener?
Good question.
And what I want you to do is to pay attention to those little moments where you go, as soon as I said it, I realized. That realization is big time. Right?
Mm,
And that will happen like that until it becomes normal. And
yeah,
then it won't appear as a realization, it'll just be there. So those moments, that little moment, that was like a half a second of realization when you again were without the character. You were
yeah,
just being aware of what was happening.
mm,
Or to be more accurate, there was just awareness of what was happening.
yeah.
It wasn't you that was being aware, there was just awareness.
That's right. Yeah,
But awareness isn't a thing. Don't take that the wrong way. That's language again.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting stuff.
It's frustrating as well.
Oh, of course it is. Of course it is. Yeah, 'cause every part of the Paul character wants this to be there all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There is that certain amount of resistance from Paul.
Yes.
I can
And
sense that.
and the trick is, if it, you know, and we plant this seed and hope that it germinates, and that is that when Paul is there, the character Paul is there running the show or seeming to run the show,
Hmm.
we're relaxed about that. That's just what it is. You know, we're not going to try and change things. We're just going to be, okay, there he is running the show. Thinks he's running the show, thinks he's the boss, thinks he's organising things, thinks he's making life work,
Yeah.
thinks he's putting one foot in front of the other when I work. And then you laugh because you realise, well, that's not the way it really is. Those feet know how to walk without me telling them what to do.
Well,
Yeah.
Paul would disagree with you there. Paul's a clever
Yes.
son.
Well, that's right. Now that's a big one because that Paul was really, really strong, wasn't he? I mean, he was really
Yes.
adamant about how much control he had and all the rest of it. Well,
Yes.
let him be there. Let him have those delusions. Right? It's fine. You know, Paul, the character, he believes a whole lot of shit that's total rubbish.
Yeah, it's finding the noticer of all that.
Mm.
Just, what is it? Where can it be found? What is it that notices? Every single
Yeah.
little thing, frustration, any thoughts.
Mm.
Oh, it's like all the time. I think that's like, that can be like a default. As soon as, there's a moment of, oh, thinking, what's noticing the thinking and trying to stop and find what is it?
Yeah, but I think
Where
the thing
is
is, like you said, the more you try, the harder it seems to get. It seems to slip away from you the more you try and grasp onto it.
Yeah.
Well, see,
But it does
the
stop.
grasping onto it is done by the character Paul.
Mm. That's right, yeah. And it's not Paul to grab onto.
Yeah. So,
And asking the noticer, it's like a hack on the mental movement, because it's like, I don't know, where is the noticer of all that? This was just thought spewing out, and yeah, it's sort of like a hack into the mind.
Yeah, yeah. But there's a bit of a paradox here in my mind, at any rate. The harder I try, the more it slips away. But if I don't try, Paul takes over constantly. I can't shut him down, I can't shut him up. So I find it a bit
well,
difficult.
that's the way it used to be. That's the way it used to
Mm.
be. Now, because of this experience that you've had, you can see the import of that. So it was okay. One thing to recognise that, all right, Paul was able to walk to the not Paul, but that
Well,
body
yeah.
was able to walk to the top of the stairs with no control whatsoever.
Mm.
So all of a sudden you realise, oh, this thing where I thought I had control and I was the one that was doing all of this, that's not true.
Mm.
It happens by itself if I'm not there. Right? You've had that experience now. So there's
Yeah.
control out the window. So okay, you can let Paul the character believe he has control, but you know it's bullshit.
Yeah.
But your experience tells you now that that was bullshit. It's not an intellectual thing anymore. We're not saying believe this. We're saying you now know because of your experience.
Mm.
Now, if you didn't recognise the import of that, then it would slip away eventually. You know, like in a week from now, you wouldn't even remember that. But now,
Yeah.
because you're here and because we're talking about it, you'll remember it, and you can realise that the old Paul, he thought that he had to run the show to the minutest detail. He was a micromanager of every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
And now you realise that it's just an overlay. Right? All that stuff was happening anyway.
Mm.
And it's like, you know, you could walk across the room and not even realise you've done it. Okay? Or you can walk across the room and then you can look back and you can go, oh, I did that. Well, that's just thoughts masturbating. It's an overlay. They claim ownership, but they're only
Yeah.
thoughts, and that they don't mean anything particularly.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. But what their purpose was originally was to make Paul feel okay. Right? I managed to do that. I was successful. I'm okay. That kind of process goes on all the time, and that's what we learn as young kids. That certain stories make us feel good. And when the teacher says, "Oh, you're a clever young Paulie," right, that makes you feel good. Right? If he says, "Oh, you're stupid, go and sit in the corner with the dunce's hat on," well, you feel bad.
Mm.
that's because before they say that, they already tell you that what they're going to say is important and you've got to pay attention to it. And what we now know is that's just their opinion. It means nothing. It's just their thoughts. Yeah. Wow. So tell Paul, tell Dennis over there how to get that experience that you had. He loved that experience.
I can't tell you, I'm afraid. That's got just happened.
It just happened. That's right. Exactly. Yeah. So how long you've been chasing something like this for, well, for, as far long as I've known you, for a couple of years now, eh?
Yeah,
Yeah. And then all of a
yeah.
sudden you listen to a video that Paul put up and
That's it.
boing, it
That's it.
happened.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was my hurdle all along. I think it's been going around in circles the last couple of years.
Yep. Something just clicked.
Yeah, the first step, I hope.
Yes. And a big step, huge step, an opening, if you like. I would call it
Yeah,
a portal. Yeah. And it's funny because this stuff abounds in paradoxes. You know, so
mm,
all of us, you know, we'll see things that seem to contradict each other all the time with this. So it's one thing to say if you apply effort, it's kind of going in the wrong direction. But it's another realization I've had that being obsessed about this is a really good thing to help you get there. But how do you be obsessed without doing, without
yeah.
applying effort? Yeah, that's the trick, isn't it? Yeah,
That's it. Yeah, it's that sense of I can control this process. I can make it work for me.
yeah. And Paul Simpson down there, he did a lot of research when he went, well, with his waking up experience. He went through the archives at Liberation Unleashed. Then he realized that most people woke up when they were doing the dishes or mowing the lawn,
Mm,
not when they were working at it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So as we have these meetings and we talk about this and that and everything else, other things will hit you. You'll realize various things as well. So it's really very much learning. No, I don't know how to put this. Language doesn't help me. Being patient is the conventional way to put it. Being
Mm,
patient with what's happening at the moment or what might happen, recognizing when thoughts are running ahead, saying, I want something to happen, and just going, okay, that's the character Paul again. Just go over to the other side of the room and sit there like a good boy and don't interfere. That's the kind of attitude that we have towards our thoughts,
yeah.
friendly but firm. Yeah.
Mm.
Another valuable one I see, Michelle, is that today you've got your camera turned on, so you're here with us in a bigger way than you were last time, and even bigger than the time before when you weren't here. Yeah. So what's your experience been lately? Have you had an initial shift with this realization?
I have. This is a really good topic of how it's being talked about because um, this happened almost a week ago, and I actually was doing something else too. I was working on a practice that I had just listened to a podcast about that wasn't about waking up, but it was about it specifically, it wasn't about waking up. but it was about anxiety and how this person had anxiety. Many of you might know it's Keith Kavanaugh that does podcasts on A Course in Miracles, and he was telling his story about how someone taught him to notice the thoughts of anxiety and then also picture him with Jesus in the theater. So you pictured yourself as a character on the screen, and then you also pictured some separate you with Jesus watching this character on the screen. And so every time, so it wasn't bypassing the anxiety. He would feel the anxiety and then picture that. Well, just sitting down the first time, I wasn't in anxiety. I was just trying to be like, oh, wait, what would that? And then all of a sudden, like,
Yes.
yeah, all of a sudden I was like, what? Yeah, it was really, so that lasted only a few hours,
Yep.
like
Yep.
maybe 3 or 4 hours. And I'm very specific of like, I was totally like, oh, this character is feeding the cats. And I knew that I was just in a bizarre space. It feels very bizarre because it's
Yep.
like
Yep.
something is doing something, but I know it isn't me.
Yeah.
How is it happening?
Oh, I'm so excited. Oh, that's brilliant. I love it. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, like,
So similar to Paul's experience, that all of a sudden there was a realization that there was the character, and then there was something else. Yeah.
yes, there was something.
Brilliant.
And so, a
Yeah.
friend of mine and I have been um, like working together on awakening, and we share videos and all this. And so I texted her and I'm like, something just happened. And so we talked. So that was my only experience of being able to like talk to another human.
Hmm.
That kind of was like, how how am I talking from this
Yeah.
too?
Yeah.
But then it happened. I got ready to go to bed, and it was a fear attachment thought that snapped it
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
specific, like, oh no, what if this goes away? And it was like,
Of course. There, that one. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I sat down though, and I typed out stuff because because it was so short, I was kind of worried that I would forget it.
Capture it. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, just enough to kind of remind the character too. So I literally was writing like, I'm reminding the character that this happened. Like,
Good one. Yeah.
you don't exist. I know you don't. So don't. So yeah, that was kind of fun to do that. So I've kind of been journaling around like different things that have come. So other things have come kind of since that without feeling that specific thing. Like I had an experience of like being in a void that I thought would terrify me, but I recognized that was just a thought. And so it wasn't terrifying to just be there. And
Mm.
just other things. It felt like there was kind of a lot of different things happening. But also, it's been very clear that when I'm tense or like in my thoughts, it's a very obvious that, like, nope, relaxing needs to happen. In fact, I felt like a relaxing happened one time where so I'll even just do this as a practice and trying not to have it come back as much as just like that felt really good just to focus on floating. So I would just sit there, and that's actually when some of the other kind of, I don't know what to call them, insights or
Experiences. Yeah.
yeah, other glimpses of things, I don't know. But I have been kind of back in the struggle too of because one of the things I did was there was something that happened to where I'm like, you're dead. The character like is dead. And I like could turn around and see the projector on the screen, and the character is dead. And every time I go and look at the projector, because I'll think that, oh, she's back, but every time I look at the projector and then look at the screen, she's there on the ground. She's really not, she hasn't come back to life
Mm.
yet. It feels like she is.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, I hadn't thought of it like that, but yeah, we animate the character. It is a sock puppet, and we animate it for useful purposes, like talking to the person down the shop or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what's felt a little bit like confusing to me too, because it's like, well, now that it feels like I'm back in the character, but I knew the character's dead. That wasn't,
Yeah.
still feeling like I have to make decisions, I have to figure things out.
Yeah,
Like
you'll
that.
get up to that. You already know that it's just the way it happens and it's not necessary. But yes, yeah. So here's an interesting one. If how does this happen, or why does this happen? If those questions arise, just get rid of them, flick them away. They're not something to engage with. If you engage with the how or the why, you're just going to go down mental rabbit holes. Right. So the technique that you can use when those things turn up is change the how or the why into what. Right. It's legitimate to ask what is happening, and the only answer is going to be in the body, not in the head, not in the mind. So what is happening is what is the experience that's happening here, and that will, if you're relaxed and curious about what is happening, why may reveal itself. But you'll never find the why by chasing it, because that just takes you off down mental rabbit holes.
Yeah, yeah.
They
It
don't
felt like
work.
those questions were only coming up because it was just I was disoriented. There
Yes,
was the disorientation of like, wait a minute, what, how, what am, what? It was just everything of like,
yeah.
wait,
So
no,
well, what Rowena was saying earlier, it seems to be that the use of the character is a protective thing. It's trying to look after us. It's trying to make us feel okay. And so it's learned that short-term ways to make us feel okay is a whole lot of behavior that we come up with. And then it turns out that a lot of that behavior is a bit neurotic, because we're chasing it all the time.
oh,
Yeah,
I've definitely already felt like a very tightness of control. Like the character is really terrified of not
yes,
being in
yeah,
control, even though I know she isn't and never has been.
right. Never has been, exactly. Yeah. Well, see, this is the thing. People talk about this stuff, and they talk about the death of the ego. Well, that's a load of rubbish. We don't, for a start, the ego isn't a thing. It's just a way of describing an attitude that we have. But essentially, that attitude is well, the way I put it, the self is body armor. It's a protective device that we've developed in order to feel okay in a very, very chaotic world. And
And
what
it's not just, sorry, Vince, it's not just one attitude either. It's countless, because it's like the weather. We go into one experience, and then there's an attitude, as it were, of knowing how, or having expectations or whatever based on memory, and then something else will happen, and different people. So it's always changing. It's never the same. It's put under the bracket of a one word, either ego or self, but it's a process of endless sort of readjustings.
Yep. So it's important to appreciate that the character, which we can probably use an alternative name, say the ego, if you like, but the character is a better description, is not the enemy. We don't want to kill it. We don't want to get rid of it. We just want to put it in its place. And it turns out that it doesn't have much use. It has an occasional use, but it's not, because it's no longer recognized as no longer running the show, then all of these, Pernilla calls them post-it notes on reality. That's what the character does. It's constantly putting post-it notes on reality and saying, I did that. Aren't I good? I'm in control. If I don't control, it won't happen. So I'm in control, etc. And so all of these are just post-it notes. They're not reality at all. They're just thoughts that get overlaid on reality. But they're occasionally useful. So we don't want to get rid of them. We don't want to kill them. We don't want them to be locked up. We just want them to. So the way I put it is a great relationship with your thoughts would be the kind of relationship with a really, really good friend. Let's imagine, and it may be the case, but let's imagine that you've had this really good friend for years and years and years. But this friend, and I've got one like this friend is, let's say he's a conspiracy theorist, right? And if we give him an opportunity, he'll get up on his soapbox and he'll go on and on and on and on and on about conspiracy theories. But he's a good enough friend where you can say, I don't want to hear this. Shut up. Just don't talk about that stuff. And he'll do it without taking offense because he's a good friend and he knows that you don't mean, whatever. Well, that's the kind of relationship with your thoughts and your character, right? You can just say, oh, leave me alone. Go over the other side of the room and sit there and amuse yourself. Just leave me alone for the moment. I'm busy relating to what's actual. I'm not interested in this theoretical bullshit that you keep on telling me about.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and luckily too, I see now, looking back at life in general, like I've had some really good therapists that helped with all kind, like,
Yep, shadow stuff probably. Yeah.
yeah, I feel really fortunate to have probably more of a foundation of, because kind of basically there isn't anything to do different than what was already being done with the character. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
luckily
That's a
I've
big
had,
realization too.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, like being with my body in the feelings and allowing feelings, and um yeah, and basically that's the biggest thing, just being aware of what sensations come up and being with those sensations. Yeah, and recognizing I'm not my thoughts, which has been easier than since
Mm.
the waking up, I guess, since,
Yeah.
I mean, I've known it in theory that and
Yeah.
wasn't my, but it's kind of hard to not deny that now.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's it. So frequently these things will start out as an intellectual awareness of what's going on, but it's just a head thing. It's just the mind amusing itself again. And then somehow it can bleed through into an actual experience. Yeah. I don't know if it's the case, but I rather imagine it's the case that it's always going to be intellectual before it's experiential. But no, that's not true. No, that's not true. No, we do have experiences will happen to us and we'll suddenly realize something about it. Yeah. So, okay. It's not always intellectual. Yeah. Mm. How's things been for you, Monique?
Um, yeah, I've been listening a little bit to looking at habits and rituals and things like that. It just kind of, my attention was drawn to it for some reason. And part of it's because it's becoming really clear to me that although if someone asked me, you know, how do you plan your day? I would say, I go, you know, I do this or that, or I go with the flow. And someone called me on it. And so I had to rethink about that. So what's that, you know, going with the flow? And I think I would have said, I get to do what I want to do because I'm retired, the whole story about that. But what started showing up when I paid more attention to my habits and ritual is that I'm quite attached to all of them. And I have many descriptors and preferences and habits. So the thought came to me, well, you know, why don't you just notice that and see, you know, just get up in the morning without a plan and see if anything changes. Of course, the mind wants to plan, and even trying to not make a plan is planning. So it took a little bit of practice, but at some point, one morning I woke up and something was just more open, and I was supposed to go to, you know, it starts with coffee and, you know, a few little things in the morning. I was supposed to go to yoga, and it's usually something that I don't miss. But the thought came to me that it's a beautiful day, just my body wants to go for a walk, and I ended up not going. And interlaced with that was the thought, well, what if I don't plan anything? Maybe I'll just end up doing nothing at all, and I'll be super lazy and all of that. But the experience was different.
Mm.
As I sort of stopped and took a moment to think, you know, is it yes or no? I went for a walk and I ended up walking, you know, a long distance. I thought I'll just go for a short walk because there's still the planning that wants to happen, not knowing how to go with the flow. And as I dropped these things, the energy was just, the surge of energy was there. And when I was, and even the food, I decided, I thought, okay, well, what about food? You know, should have a good breakfast, you know, all that conditioning. And I didn't feel hunger. So again, I just kept doing that all day long. And while the mind still wanted to come back to some kind of structure, when I forgot about it, I would end up going this way, thinking, okay, I'll walk for, you know, I'll take a short walk, and then it becomes a long walk, or a long walk becomes a short walk, turning in the opposite direction. It was a lot of fun, actually. I really, really enjoyed that day. And anyway, so it kind of relaxed into the evening. Well, actually, and that was what I noticed. What was really noticed was just the body relaxing, and then just more presence.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And also recognizing that it's going with the flow, you know, the way it's used, you know, commonly is It's
Yeah,
not common, you
yeah.
know.
People say that, but yeah,
It's not common. It's not. You have to just drop everything, right up, including what to eat and when to eat,
right.
and when you eat, you sit, consider what you want to eat, and as you're eating it, relaxing and relaxing and relaxing. And I think that was the takeaway,
Yeah.
is this relaxing.
So I
And
would see what's happened for you is really super significant in that it's like you've dropped down a level, right? And so you've revisited Feta 3 if you want to apply that one with rites and rituals. And rites and rituals are so sneaky that we don't even know we've got them. You know, having a favorite chair and getting upset if somebody else sits in it, you know, or having a favorite knife and fork and getting upset if we can't get it. That kind of stuff it
yeah,
just sneaks in on us, you know. So yeah, going with the flow is a brilliant one to examine like that. So it's a much more subtle stuff. It's not the
it's
gross stuff. It's more subtle, but yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah,
very subtle. And even the coffee in the morning, I couldn't get beyond the not starting my day with the coffee. But however, what I realized is that I ended up drinking half my cup of coffee. When I was done, satisfied, it was just there. And actually, I just noticed my cup of coffee this morning again. It's just over there. I even forgot to put it away.
yeah.
It's all these little things,
Yeah.
and
And
it's
even
so
sneakier, you may not realize it, but even sneakier, it's not just the drinking of the coffee, but the whole process of making it is part of
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it has an effect on you. Yeah.
so multi-layered. This morning, this morning I went to yoga, and I arrived there, and I have this other aspect of when I'm in a social situation, I'm friendly, I say hi, I acknowledge people, um, all of that. And also another layer of, I like this person a lot. This person's nice, not so nice,
Yeah.
all of these. So this morning, I went to yoga, and with the what if I just drop all of that? Like, if I arrive there and I don't want to speak to anyone, if it doesn't come out
Don't
from
talk.
me
Yeah.
involuntarily, that's okay. And then there's this background noise, like, it's
Yeah,
not very nice, and you want to connect, Monique, you want to, all this stuff, its personalities. But anyways, so I ended up going there, and um, that's exactly what happened. I did nothing, not even greeting the teacher, which in the yoga land, that's disrespectful. But what happened is that I just ended up going to my place, my spot, took a different spot.
well, good.
And when I'm there, somehow the teacher managed to get my attention and smiled. So it came to me instead of me going to it. That's a big thing for me, because I make it really easy for people to connect with me in social situations. And then this friend who I have an attachment to, which is becoming a bit weird because of this change that's happening, I also didn't have the urge to greet. And I know it sounds like nothing, but it is so big for me.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
been so big. And then what was noticed is that this person made an extra effort to come to me and say, Monique, oh, I like your talk, and you know, the color, the fabric, blah, 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 blah. And I'm surprised. And I don't know what I said, something. And then I thought, okay. But after the same thing, so I'm packing my stuff ready to go. This person is like chasing me. Hey, Monique, you know, would you like to go and do this or that? Anyway, so the opposite of what I thought I was putting out there happened. I still don't understand it, except that it was such a good experience for me to realize that there's nothing to chase. There's nothing to do.
Yeah. You don't have to put all that energy into being a nice person.
No.
Mm.
And so the experience of doing the practice of yoga was so much better because it was just,
Yeah,
you
much more
know, just
warm.
this body on the mat, not having to be anything or give anything or respond to anything.
Okay.
And nothing changed around anyone who wanted to connected.
Yep.
It was not, you know, there was a response that came from me, but it wasn't charged with any
Yeah, it was
agenda.
one thing that's worth considering, and something I've experienced, and you very likely will also experience it, and that is that as you change, you'll get pressure from friends and family to be the way you used to be. They don't want you to change. They don't want to suddenly be relating to a stranger. They want the person they thought they knew back. And so there'll be unconscious pressure from them for you to behave the way you used to behave, to do the things you used to do. And of course, once you recognize that's there, you just don't, it's not going to, you're not going to wear the pressure. You're not going to accept it. You just, but you're relaxed about it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's definitely been happening more and more intensely also from everyone. That's when I know that something's changing. It's coming from everywhere. Even that situation at yoga, I mean, this person was really pursuing me about things that I don't care about, and there's still this automatic, you know, response. But
it's incredibly complex, the situation. So when you don't behave the way you used to, all of a sudden they feel insecure. And they've got, and because they're still run by the character, I presume, I'm not sure that, but nevertheless, if that is the case, they're going to be frantically looking for that connection again that they think they've got. So it's a much more complex situation. It's not just about you; it's about them, and it's about everything in between you two, and so on and so on. Yeah. When you go into that yoga and you pick a different spot, that spot somebody else decided was their spot. And yeah, you're they've got to take another spot, and that makes them feel insecure too. Yeah, so it radiates out. There's no.
No, there was a reaction to I took the spot almost on purpose. I was being a bit of a little brat. This spot belongs to this person who kept on pursuing me, and person had to say something, not directly, but to try to make light of it. But I knew. I just smiled.
So not a little brat, a big bitch.
Was I was, and this person has some unique needs, physical needs, at least in her experience. That's the way. So no, there's so it's a great experience, but there's that reaction that's happening around me, and I'm making light of it. I was as I talk about it, and as you point out the fact that people will want to keep the old Monique in there. There's also this reaction in me of it's happening and it's heating up, and while I was in the right, frame of mind this morning, when I think of it, it was a pretty direct response that was happening from everyone, from a few people that seem to be more attached. So it's going to get more comfortable, more uncomfortable before it gets comfortable. But perhaps the approach is just to keep doing my thing.
Sure, yeah. And you don't know what it's going to be, so
I don't know.
Yeah, that's
I can't help it now. Yeah, it's just.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah, so we look
this
for and Paul, we look for a point where these things kind of get a momentum of their own and they keep going without having to do anything at all. Yeah. And that's it. And I just love that it's like if we imagine this thing as a spiral and we start off with all your thoughts are bullshit and go around 360 degrees and then we go, oh no, hang on, some thoughts are useful. But we gotta start with breaking that dependence on the original thoughts. Yeah. And then it gets more subtle every time you go around. You start looking and seeing things that are much less obvious than what they were in the beginning. Great. I love it that you're dropped into that subtle level. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was a lot of fun actually. This whole thing of dropping the planning and dropping that belief that I'm in charge of my life and I'm the one making things happening.
Yeah.
Even as I say that, it's just I can just feel that constriction.
So what I want to push is curiosity. Right? This is a big experiment, and we don't know what the outcome will be, and it's just wow. There's so much discovery to happen. We never realised. We thought we had a handle on life, and before this started, and all of a sudden we're going, whoa! There's a whole new world here. I wonder what inhabits this world. It's a big experiment, and there's a lot of curiosity, and nothing known, nothing determined. Everything is always changing, always in flux, so we never have any idea what's going to turn up. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. There's this other experience that I had. It happened the other day when I went to yoga. That was really interesting. It was a new teacher, and the teacher had asked, "Is it okay if I do any kind of adjustments, physical adjustments?" And yeah, absolutely. But I forgot that she'd mentioned that. And as we're laying down at the end in Shavasana, super relaxed. And all of a sudden, there's this sensation on my arm, sort of pressing down, without me being aware in my head that this was happening. It took me a moment before anything was, and it
Before the story arrived.
Yeah,
What was
that
happening?
was a new experience for me. And if I were to describe it, it's like just before you fall asleep, when you feel like you're sinking into your bed, if ever that's happened, it was like that feeling of this being the bed, it's sinking into me. And there's absolutely no thought when this happened. And I only know that because after that, the awareness kicked in and I realized, oh, she just did and she went to the other side. She did the same thing, but because at this point my head was
engaged.
this is what she's doing. The experience was completely different.
Mm,
It's like it went from a total relaxation, no resistance, nothing, just that something melting into me to she's putting her hand on me.
mm.
That really stayed with me. Of course, as
Yeah,
I say that, I'm thinking I want more of that, right?
right, yes.
But it was so involuntary. Again, it was just a state of relaxation.
Right. So you get that one, Paul? There's similar experience to yours. You know, there's no character and then there's a character.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
trouble. Yes.
Yeah.
It's amazing when the brain kicks in. It's just,
And it's so real, isn't it? You know, like there's a person
yeah,
pushing down, not just the. So you could also describe the original one, and so you're until you got somewhere down the stairs, Paul. You could call that direct experience.
Yeah,
That
that's true.
is experience before thoughts turn up to corrupt it and to explain it and describe it and change it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly it.
yeah. And even Paul, when you were recounting your story, your voice was completely different.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
it's like, yeah, it's like a different um, part of you.
yeah. So I hadn't noticed that. That's an interesting one, isn't it, Paul? So the character Paul has a different voice to actual Paul.
Yeah, there's probably some truth in that. The character Paul's always stressed out and anxious and tense and angry.
Yeah, as you talk about Paul, right? Yeah, no,
Good one.
it's a good
Oh, but I
experience.
love these stories. They're great. It feels so good.
Yeah, it's fun. That was, I don't know what that was just, it just, I think the thing with that experience, it just makes you realize after that there's this other dimension
Mm,
that we don't tap into most of,
yeah.
most of
We
the
say the
time.
we say the words tap into, but it's not. That's not actually how it happens, is it?
No, that's right. That's me
But
trying. Yeah.
it works as a
It's just experience. Yeah.
yeah.
Experience.
Yeah.
You can't make it happen. Darn.
Yep. So how do you relate to all this, Dennis? That must be a dangling a carrot in front of your nose kind of thing.
Evening, everyone. No, I was just enjoying listening to the stories. I did miss Paul's because I came on a bit late, so I think you were coming to the end. I missed out on Paul's experience or his shift, so I don't know what that was. I can imagine.
Well, just a quick refresh of what happened to Paul was that he woke up and didn't immediately put on the character suit. And it wasn't until he was halfway down the stairs that he realised that he was actually putting on the character Paul again. So before that, there was no control, there was no thoughts about anything. There was just the experience of getting out of bed and walking in the direction of the beginning of the day. And so I mean, Paul's been in a very similar situation to you. Of course, everybody's unique, but in the sense that he's been for a long time going, well, what are we talking about? What is this? What is this experience that we have? And then spontaneously, it happened. Yeah. And so he recognized that there is a character that is not him. It's a the metaphor is it's a coat that he puts on, and then he becomes stressed out, angry Paul. And before that, he was totally relaxed and open, and yeah.
Yeah, I guess what I'm doing at the minute is kind of putting down all my expectations, my ideas of awakening, my beliefs, what should happen, what should be the case. But I think that's all acting as a block to any kind of progression.
Of course.
So the willingness to say, well, all these expectations I had, or beliefs I had, or well, the big spiritual teachers describe this and that, and experiences, and you can't be awake until you have those experiences, or they're permanent. They're all strong beliefs that I've kind of started to look at, and I'm willing to put them down, leave them alone, not necessarily believe in them, and just be with what's here.
So am I right
I
in
could
thinking that you have had some experiences in the past
oh
of,
yeah, well,
and
yeah,
that
I
makes it
mean, I
worse
could,
because your expectations are to get back to that.
well, there was probably an expectation for some of those to return and continue, and then others that I haven't had, like the experience of, everything I look at is me. And never had that. So there's an expectation that has to happen. I can relate to Michelle's experience that she talked about, because they had something similar, albeit for a few minutes years ago. So there's been experiences, but then there's expectations of the experience other people talk about. And particularly if they're well known and big teachers, then you're kind of, in the early days, you hook on to them that they will be signs of awakening. So I've followed that for a long time, and now I'm just going to put them down, forget about it. I've done everything else.
I just want to say something. When I was looking at the third fetter, talked about the ninth fetter, which is going with the flow. And part of me thought, that's wrong of me to assume that I could do or be at any other level. There's still a part of me that says, the teacher says you're not ready. But I love the word flow. And I thought, I'm just going to open it up and see. And I remember something that I think Vince had said, or someone had said, or a thought that came up was, fake it until you make it. What if I could go and be in the flow? Even if it's just for like a second, what if I could just be in the flow? And why not try it out? And why not I'm just going to try it out to experience something or not, just to try it out. I'll just say that, and even when I listen to a little bit of the Better Nine, Pernell's keeps telling you, if you haven't, or the message I hear is, if you're not, haven't, what's that word? There's a word that you're past, or you've broken, let's say fetter three, basically warning, you're not ready for this. This is what I always hear. It's part of the problem. That's part of my own mental block. But I thought, well, what the heck? I'm just curious. So the point is that I think my experience was really valuable to just try it on for size anyways, because that's where I was drawn to be. And I wouldn't I'm not saying that in any way that I'm at any level. I'm not level, not even past level 3 if I had to bet money on it.
Look, forget all that. That's total rubbish, that stuff. Yeah.
I know, but and I could hear you. I could hear Vince say that. That's total rubbish. And I heard that when I was doing it, and I thought, okay, what do I have to lose? It's just me here. What do I have to lose? I'm just gonna try it out.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great way to go.
Yeah.
Just try it out anyways.
So there's something even a bit more subtle here too that I want you to get through to Dennis from you. And then when you say, I'll just try it out, right? There's the character doing something.
Oh, right.
But no, don't say it like that. But in that intention, there was an allowing for it to happen. Right? So although it's
Exactly.
on the surface, we're going to do it, but the reality was there was a letting go.
Exactly. That's right. So what precedes me all the time is this thinking that I'm doing something.
Yeah, yeah,
The body wants to move, the mind wants to move,
yeah.
want to make things happen. But it can be dropped. Like, it's just a direction in
That's
the
right.
moment. It's just like, okay, I'm just going to go outside. It's just a direction.
So we want to tell Dennis how to do this. So the thing is, he's saying, "Well, I'm not gonna do it that way anymore. I'm going to do this." Right, and we know that that's great as an intention, but that's all it is an intention, and
That's
the
okay. Yeah.
happening of that will happen or not, regardless of the intention or regardless of how much effort we put into it. And probably
Yeah. It's,
more effort
yeah.
you put in, the less likely it is.
Well, yeah. So what I hear is, the same as me is, so Dennis, you have an intention to drop it. It doesn't matter where you start. So start with the intention of dropping it or intention of doing something, and then you drop it. You just relax. It's hard to explain relax. You just relax with it. Don't take it seriously. I didn't know what was going to happen with the flow. And sometimes I was in the flow, sometimes I was out, but it doesn't matter because it was just a direction that I took. And then it just,
Yeah.
it's not, I didn't do anything. It's just the body just responded.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you can imagine here's a metaphor, or an analogy or something. I don't know what you call it, but anyway. So you're with somebody and you're facing in a certain direction, and they say, "Turn around and look at this." Okay, so there's an indication of something to do, and you turn around simply because they've mentioned it, but they didn't say focus on that spot there. They just said when you turn around, use your eyes. That's kind of what they said. And so the using your eyes part, it just happens. Right? The turning around was like the focus of where to look. And so the intention to drop it is the focus of what to do. But the actual happening happens automatically within that kind of thing. That was a bit confusing, was it?
I kind of guess, but what I'd say is it's I could even put it a different way. It's maybe not that I'll put it down, but I won't pick it up as quickly and run with it anymore. Again, another intention, I know, but when you've been willing to try everything, but the one thing you don't want to do is give up your ideas about what awakening will be like. So that feels like the last thing I need to do. Whether I do it or not, who knows? But the intention is to do it now. The intention has been that I've seen it more clearly than I've had before. That it is just a thought, another belief, another idea.
Yeah.
I can see through 90% of thoughts and ideas, but there's a few sticky ones that keep catching me, and I'm starting to see through them now. And it's kind of devastating in a way. There's a sense of betrayal, a sense of being married to someone all your life that's been whispered in your ear and you've trusted it, and now you're kind of realizing this is this is all bullshit. So
Yeah,
that
well, often
precedes the dropping.
as well when that happens, yeah, we can miss that whatever comes along with it. Yeah. So one thing that comes to mind, Dennis, that might be worth you putting some focus on is language, right? So you said whether or not I do it, and I would say reframe that and say it as whether or not it happens. Right? It's just that the implicit meaning in language keeps confirming the character, the reality of the character. And so if you change it to when it happens rather than when I do it, that's just one step closer to what the actual happening will be.
Yeah.
So the intention is just the direction that you look in, and then the happening happens or not. And if there's this idea of doing it, that will just fade away probably. Yeah. I mean, it's fine stuff, that we're talking about, but it's all helpful. We're
Yeah, yeah.
sharpening the tools.
I just find language is such a, like, even if you say just let it happen, it's still confusing. It's
Yeah.
like that something has to happen. Honestly, sometimes I just want to sit and not talk, because it just creates in my mind, it creates expectations of
Yes.
something. Like if you're just listening to people today share their experience, it's so broad, it's so different, it has so many different colors and textures, it's so unique to every single person. So to think that any of us would wake up the same way, it's impossible. Even when I describe my little thing about that sensation, but that's just very, very unique to me because of my own makeup, where I'm more of a physical, sensual person. So things come to me. I experience sensations more than something that's more descriptive, like when Michelle was explaining, her own characterization of, who this Michelle is, versus the direct experience. So it's very confusing to me sometimes to even listen to other people's description of how they awaken, because it's very tempting to try to compare.
Absolutely, yeah, and impossible. So
It's completely impossible.
there's no possible way you could actually convey any details of the sensation that you experienced when she touched your left arm, right? All we've got is an incredibly simplistic, almost cartoon picture of what happened for you, and then we relate to our own experience whether we've had
Yeah.
something like that or not, kind of
Yeah.
thing. Yet
And it's not.
it carries with it though a sense of awe and a sense of magnitude and so on, that's so in
Yeah.
spite of the fact that language is totally inept and inadequate for this kind of stuff, it also does a good job sometimes. Yeah.
It's still helpful. I love to hear everyone's experience. It doesn't matter where anyone is, because it all has that. It's all interlaced with awakening. They're all experiences of awakening.
Mm.
It's just some sound more, I don't know.
Mm.
Some appeal to us more than others, maybe.
So Monique, when you were walking the other day, was Monique actually in the flow, or was there just the flow?
It was in and out. I can't say that it was not just flow. I can't say that it was just flow. There was an awareness, of me. If I was distracted, sometimes, most especially when I saw someone and that social greeting, that would distract. Yeah. And then I would be then I would notice something in my passage, or notice the walking, or the things that just happen naturally. Then that felt like flow. Yeah. So no, I was not in flow the entire time. It was more being aware of something, not leading me, but this pull towards this direction or that direction. That's where it felt like flow.
And can you get the subtlety of the language here that, and maybe I'm making things up here, but you said I wasn't totally or always in the flow, right? Instead of saying the opposite, instead of saying sometimes I was out of the flow,
Right.
you didn't say that. You were, but there was an implication that you could or should be always in the flow.
Oh, yes, right.
Just the way you said it, very subtle stuff here. I'm really nitpicking for sure. But again, it's that seductiveness of language. We presume we've got these background stories going, and one of those that I heard you say, whether it's right or wrong, was that you should be, or even if it would just be good, that you could be always in the flow. It's perfectly reasonable to be in and out, isn't it? When you meet somebody and you've got to talk to them, then you're going to use the character skill to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. It's very in and out for sure.
And this is what life is. This is a much more realistic picture of life. We're always in and out all the time. Nobody's anywhere permanently.
No.
And when we're working with seekers, one of the things that I find useful these days is that they will frequently have the kind of experience that they're looking for, but they will bypass it. No, bypass is the wrong word to use. They will overlook it. They won't realise, because it's a small thing and it's there for an instant almost, and so they almost then negate it. When in fact we frequently have these experiences of direct experience of awe. We just don't remember it because nothing gets filed away when that happens. Yeah.
I kind of want to direct the attention back to Dennis here because he said something significant, at least in my opinion, where it sounded like he's basically dropping the stuff that keeps him seeking and is experiencing something emotional around that. So I'm curious, Dennis, what are you feeling? Can you describe that feeling?
Well, when I started to contemplate it earlier, there was an initial bit of fear, but that was short-lived. It was more energetic. And then there was a small bit of sadness. But what seems to have lingered longer is the sense of betrayal. And don't know why that's the label I put on the feeling. Oh, I've been betrayed, but it's more like, oh, I've betrayed myself, something like that. And I've had such a strong desire to awaken and to seek for so long, and to try everything as much as you can. But like I said, the one thing wasn't on the table for discussion was to stop seeking and to stop imagining that these great teachers that have spoken about these awakenings and these stories you've heard from the biggest teachers to people on this meeting and their experiences, that until I've had something like that, I cannot stop. That is the sign to stop. And now I'm saying, look, it's time to do that last thing. I don't even want to say and see what happens, because there's a built-in expectation to that. It's just to stop and stay stopped. And who knows?
So it would be, to me, it becomes obvious that that sense of betrayal is an expression of maybe resistance to the direction that you've been, that you're now facing. You know, there's that. So that dropping of the character, that sense of betrayal, and I would definitely imagine that when we are no longer primarily that character, there can be a sense of loss there, that because that character did bring us comfort quite a lot, as well as the suffering. But nevertheless, there was good moments that we imagine we're going to give up as a result of that. So that sense of betrayal, I imagine, is worth considering, contemplating, examining, in that if that goes, there's much more likely to be what you hope for, that a dropping takes place.
Yeah, maybe. And it wasn't like, it's not constant. It was a short-lived emotion. And I imagine there may be more emotions as there's certain thoughts and beliefs that come up and I can sit with and question. But then there was other ones I was more faithful to that co-opted into the belief and the seeking. Now there's an opportunity to question those ones, and in questioning them, see what emotions, feelings, sensations in the body come up, and just allow them. I could say, this could be a process of clearing out repressed emotions and feelings that have been kept repressed because of the desire to seek and to obtain ideas that I have about what it is. So, yeah, it's kind of like you're lifting the lid off something and seeing what bubbles to the surface. And this will be maybe something that'll go on for a number of days and weeks, who knows?
Yeah.
Beautiful. I don't know if this story fits, and you don't need to entertain it if it doesn't feel right, but I find that this betrayal, this sense of betrayal, often comes from it's kind of a realizing that the interpretation or the fantasy we've had of all those descriptions of awakening, when we realize that that isn't true, there is a sense of betrayal directed towards the teacher or the speaker. But in fact, it's our own interpretation that created that illusion, not the teacher.
Yeah. I definitely didn't go to blaming outwardly others. my beliefs are personal to me. My interpretations are my interpretations. And how could I ever achieve someone else's experience even, or it's my understanding of their experience, so I've made up a belief that I chase.
It's a big one.
And the part of the awakening thing was, I want to know. When I know, then I'll know. That kind of feels ridiculous. Like, what can you know? You can't know anything. You can respond in the moment to a situation, but you can't know. So the ego desires to know all the time. It's a safety mechanism or something. It's to keep you safe.
We can use there's a story that I know I've woken up, and then along comes doubts, and then I'm not sure anymore. But did I know when I knew? It just that there was no doubts. So it's not really like knowing is something that's solid, that's there. It's just that it's an experience where there are no doubts about it.
Yeah, what I'd say now, truthfully, I can't say truthfully, I know I've woken up. That doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't even register. But what I'm willing to entertain or consider, that there may have been a shift or something in the past that's missed and been integrated, and this seeking has kept that from deepening, clarifying further. So
Mm.
I can't personally say that I'll ever be able to sit at any table with anyone and say, I'm awake now. I've had a shift. That just doesn't register
No, it
as
doesn't for
something
me
that,
either. I wouldn't say that either. And so it's different to say I'm awake than saying I'm not awake.
yeah,
Right? So if you say I'm not awake, then to me it's much more obvious that you're in fantasy land. But if you say I am awake, well, you're still in fantasy land. So the reality is that we can't define any of this stuff, but we're going to use it for pointing. We're going to use it to achieve something. Intent. Yeah, achieve something. Yeah, well, that's it. But yeah, so there's there'll never be a definitive "I am awake" kind of state. Well, as soon as we say that, it becomes totally ridiculous. We start looking at details and go, well, what the hell is it anyway? And it can't be defined. So yeah. So if we reduce it down to something like what we're talking about is a perspective, then you know of that perspective. I hear the words that come out of your mouth frequently. You talk as if you know what that perspective is. And then you say, but I'm not awake. Because your idea of what awake is isn't limited to just having that perspective. You want something else as well there.
Wanted. Past tense.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it was related. I was listening to somebody sharing how they got it and then they lost it. And that this person spent like an entire year feeling like they had lost it. And it was a challenging year. All this stuff came up. And I was listening thinking, Well, that sounds like shadow work. That the expectation was that you remain in some state of awakened, uh, and like it's a permanent thing that is always
Or John,
there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, lots of expectations. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Like
and so
I was just going to say, Michelle, your experience of the what I describe it was is like there was talking when I had that experience. There was talking, there was engagement with someone else, but there was nobody talking or engaging. It was an experience that happened for a few minutes. So that was a shift. But and there was different ones of those, and there's lots I forget. Sometimes they come back to me and I remember them, but I forget more than I remember. But I suppose I've held deep beliefs that standing in front of, say, someone like Ajay Shanti on retreat and asking a question and explaining these things and asking. I remember one asking to be, for him to help with awakening, because he used to say he could do that to people, but he doesn't do it anymore. This sort of stuff. So there was always confirmation back from the big teachers that you've had some little shifts and some liftings of the veil, as they call them, but you're not awake. Now they don't say that, but that's what you take away, and then they're held deep. Um, so what I'm doing now is I'm for the first time willing to kind of go, well, maybe not that he didn't know what he was talking about, but what I understood that to be, I didn't know what he was talking about. So I can drop all that now and just see what happens.
So I would love you to get together with Ajay Shanti and the three of us and have a conversation about what normal life is, not his initial shift or not his peak experiences, but ordinary everyday life. And you'll find that it's much closer to your experience than you imagine. Right? When we watch videos on YouTube in particular, everybody starts off with their story of their initial shift. And what we do when we watch all of those one after the other, we come away with the conclusion that that's the way it is always for them. But let me tell you, I've been working with lots of people over lots of time, and I tell you what, somebody who has a huge epiphany and a major shift, right, and is in a honeymoon period where life is just so wonderfully blissful, I'll guarantee you, give them time, doubts will turn up.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden they'll go, oh, I lost it. I had it and I lost it. Well, they didn't lose it, and they never had it. But their experience that they're saying they had it is always going to be changing, always. Nobody lives in a honeymoon period forever. Some people can be there for a long time, but the majority of people I've worked with, a big one would be 3 months. Occasionally, I probably know one person who was there for 2 years, but then lost it and was right back to seeking. I want it back. I want it back. Not going to
What
happen.
is it what do people want? Is it the bliss?
Yeah.
Because the bliss doesn't last. It just gives you a glimpse, maybe, an experience.
Tell
Like
Dennis.
Well, no, I've never.
I
I
don't even
don't.
feel
That
like.
doesn't.
Hmm?
Oh, sorry, Dennis, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I've never had that I can remember the bliss, nor am I
Yeah.
seeking the bliss. I don't know what the bliss is. I suppose the experience of something dropping away and there being a much more freedom of expression, that sort of experience of no self but life operating automatically. That was, in hindsight, seen as an experience that was very freeing and lovely, and but I wasn't necessarily chasing it again, but there's probably was a subtle expectation when you're awake at some point that comes back, because you've done the work or whatever. So these are just expectations I've had, which
What
keeps
I
you seeking.
what I find is true, Dennis, is that um, there are clearly highs and lows there, but that it's always about what's here right now. I think that's the main difference, is instead of looking out there or for some state or for it to be different than how it is, there's a sinking into what's here now, because it's always here now. It's never anywhere else. And so
Yeah.
from perspective, you know, like I can be, you know, flowing and there's no sense of a separate someone here. And then there's a, you know, meeting of, you know, a contraction. But the contraction is the doorway. It's what's here now. And so having the space to relax into what's here now is for me the portal always that opens up into, or not, but that opens up into that freedom, that acceptance of embracing what's here now and recognizing it's never anywhere else but here.
And Irene, tell Dennis what your experience is in terms of how you look at what's here now.
First, there's this underlying absolute gratitude for whatever it is. That for me is a predominant space. It's just grateful, whatever it looks like. It's irrelevant what it looks like. Whether I like it or not is irrelevant. It's this gratitude of meeting what's here.
And that experience of gratitude, that's a body opening, isn't it? That's when my experience of gratitude is a relaxing, opening, inviting bodily feeling.
Absolutely. And there's a welcoming.
Yes.
You know, there's a welcoming of whatever is here. You know, it's like there's room for you at my table. You know, depression, there's space for you here at my table. You know, sadness, there's space for you here at the table. And that's always, along with that gratitude I see, is there's an absolute trust in life that whatever is here is I absolutely trust it.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't second guess it. It's just there's never a mistake. It's always just reality is perfection. It's just perfect, however it's showing up.
A good metaphor, I say, take the hand off the tiller. You've been steering the boat down the middle of the river forever and ever and ever. If you take your hand off the tiller, I'll guarantee you that boat will not run aground.
Mm.
The current will keep it in the center of the river, doing exactly what you thought it was, what you thought you were doing. It does it by itself when you let go of the tiller.
And you know, I was reading Bernadette Roberts, her book, The Experience of No Self, and she helped to put into words what the experience is here and the distinction between doing from the mind, from thought, and effortless doing. It looks the same, but internally it's completely different because, as Monique was sharing, it's as if the construct of the self is out of the way and you are the flow. And the same thing can be being done, and it may look the same externally, but internally it's completely different because there's no thought attached to it.
Yeah.
There's no thinking going on. It's just happening.
No controlled steering.
Right. It's the letting go. And so, Yeah.
Yeah, the experience here is as the letting go happens, the body is lighter, it's more open, it's more sensing, and I feel different parts of the day more childlike and excitable and excited, just more alive.
Right. Yeah, that's good. That's it.
And curiosity is another big one that is a good companion. That curiosity about whatever is showing up.
Well,
And
the curiosity is really a really huge thing about the curiosity is the openness to what might turn up. Whereas the old way of doing it, we always defined what was going to turn up before it turned up.
right. So Dennis, when you say childlike, for me, that's that curiosity.
Yeah.
That goes with that childlikeness.
And there's a sense of play and a sense of excitement in being childlike as well. Yeah. And one thing, so I wanted to mention this, thinking of Michelle here too, and that is that if we've had a lifetime of considering this kind of stuff, you know, not just awakening, but considering suffering and so on and so on. If we've had therapy, or if we've had our earlier shifts that have happened and so on, then now we're much less likely to have a giant epiphany because we've already done the work. The people that have a giant epiphany are the people that have never done any work and they fall into it one big splash. And then boom, it's a really big thing, you know. Whereas the people that have been working at it forever and ever and ever, they've already done all that work, and it just doesn't happen in a big way when it happens. And I'd say,
Yeah.
Dennis, you've definitely done the work.
Well, that was dawning on me earlier today, Vince. You're right. My mind was projecting all these things that still need to happen. I have to be terrified. I have to be this. I have to, go through all these other things. And I was like, but I've gone through all those throughout my life already. So maybe my mind is just using that as another block. And like you said, it might be just a little, that's it. So yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have to give a go on, Monique.
it's just when you just, to me, it looks like something's letting go. It's just a different energy. You may not see it for yourself. Yeah, there's a letting go.
And there isn't as much of a desire to speak. Like I'm not bursting at the seams to talk or to. I know Vince likes to drag me in every now and then, give me a hiding.
He does that. The fisherman.
Not me
I have to
doing
give a
it.
shout. I have to give a shout out to David. I haven't seen you in ages, David. Lovely to see you.
It was nice hearing all of you. I like the sharing of Irene really resonated with me. And I also share what Vince say about this. Often what happened, the image I have, it's, if you are in a very cold bath, like ice bath, and you jump into water that is 20, 25, like it seems like the water is very hot, like, oh, it's almost burning. But if you are in the water of 22, 25, well, it can be hotter, So that's why all of this experience people share and express in a very exotic way. It's just like it's more poetic than really something we can compare ourselves with. But I would say maybe something can be useful for you. There is no in and out. You're not the realization of the truth is to see that it's a deep mystery. So there is no resolution in any levels. And so that's the paradox that we are in, that there is a realization, but the realization is there's no conclusion whatsoever in any dimension, because everything is limitless, borderless, infinite. So whenever experience appear, it can appear. When it appears for the first time, it's amazing, and when you stay with it enough time, it's boring. And when you zoom in it, it becomes infinite and amazing again, and amazing again, amazing again. So all of your experience is is boring, normal, amazing, blissful, and is everything at the same time, just depending on whatever show up in the moment. And the key of the relaxation is to see that you have no choice, in the sense that this is all you have constantly. So there's no inside or outside. It's another image you can have is gravity. There's no inside or outside of gravity. But sometimes you are walking downhill and you feel gravity that's very light. And sometimes you are walking stairs and it feels like gravity is very pulling you down very strongly. And sometimes maybe you jump from an airplane and you see that there is no gravity at all. But there are just different ways gravity presented itself to you. But the understanding, it's the nature of gravity, not the way it expresses itself in your experience.
Vince, I wonder if I might get a little coaching here around a situation. It's a dynamic that is going on, that is showing up in my relationship with my husband. And energetically, it feels like he draws on me for his sense of peace, like he doesn't generate it of his own accord. And it feels like it reminds me a little bit of my dynamic with my dad, who was a narcissist. And I'm not sure how to engage with this dynamic like this morning, I wake up and I go out and I was feeding the birds and the squirrels, and I come in and I'm in that flow. There's just that flow. And then when my husband comes into the kitchen, it's like his behavior is determined by how I receive him. There's this, and there's this part of me that just wants to be free of it. And so I end up just kind of shutting down. And I'm not sure what to do with this.
Hmm. When you said he relies on me for his sense of peace, my
Yeah.
immediate thoughts were, well, that's good. You've got enough to go around, but you're behaving like you've got a limited amount and he's going to suck you dry.
Yes. It feels like I'm being sucked dry. That's exactly right. Thank you. It feels like I'm being sucked, like it's sucking it out of me.
But that's, to me, and I'm not meaning to be frivolous here, but that's obviously a story that you have a belief that you've got a limited supply and that he can interrupt it or cause it.
Well, part of it is that there's a judgment here because my husband isn't interested at all in any of this, right? And he has kind of given up on life. He spends the day watching the news. He never leaves the house except to go to physical therapy.
You can immediately say that watching the news all day is an incredibly stressful occupation.
It's what he does all day, and that's what he does.
Mm.
And he doesn't appear stressed. He seems content and will express contentment. But I think there's a judgment here about it feels like I'm being held back in some capacity, and that's where the resentment comes in.
So
And
is that resentment still there when you recognize that it's you that's holding you back, not him? It's your attitude towards him that's doing it. You still feel resentful when you recognize that?
no, when I recognize that in the moment, then there's an opening. Then
Mm.
I go, oh, that's my resentment. There's nobody doing it to me. It's not external causing resentment. Yeah. But I keep falling back into, there's a continual falling back into thinking that it's coming from him. That's what it is.
So when you were saying that, when you're up to the, I keep thinking that, my mind was jumping ahead and saying that you have a belief that you've got a limited amount of this, and then you said that it's coming from him. So that changed my story. But
It's not that there's a limited amount. It's that I don't want, there's a part of me that resents having to provide it for him.
okay, so you think you own it, do you?
Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, yeah, there's definitely some ownership there.
Right.
I like that.
So what about the possibility that by whatever shifts have happened for you, that you become a conduit for this? It's not originating in you.
Of course not. And I know that. But obviously there's a thing there with my husband because I know that.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
very, I'm the conduit and that it's not originating here.
Okay, so if we start looking at this from a slightly different angle, then I wonder if there is a fear that his involvement is going to rob you of something that's going to change this for you. So we're not
His in-
focusing on ownership now or anything like that, but that he's going to interfere with this wonderful state that you've been experiencing.
No, no, that doesn't ring true.
Okay, good, good.
It just feels like he's in his world, the world of the news and the world of, you know, and my job is caring for him, and there's a resentment about there's a bit of a resentment sometimes, not always, but sometimes, of come on now, come on now. It's like that.
Oh, okay, so is it got to do with that you want this for him and he's not being
Well,
receptive?
maybe a little bit of that, in that, you know, we have led kind of parallel lives where, you know, he's done his thing and I do my thing, and it's been fine. I do a lot of things alone or with friends. We don't have a lot of shared interests. Um, um, but I find that I don't have much to talk to him about, like at breakfast. I don't have much to talk to him about. I end up not saying much. I'm not interested in the news.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
In
does that
fact,
appear to be an issue for him?
well, it's okay if he's interested in the news. I don't have a problem with that,
And, I
really.
mean, is he happy with your silence? If you're just buzzing along there feeling pretty good and you have no inclination to talk, does that make him uncomfortable or is he happy with that?
Um, he'd rather engage with me, I think. And when I'm quiet and I shut down because I really don't have anything to say.
Hmm. And
uh,
he seems to want to drag you out of that space.
I think so.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think he sees it as problematic.
Right, right, right. Yeah.
He perceives it as problematic, and I don't know whether it's I'm protecting myself when I go quiet. I don't want to engage. It just seems such superficial engagement. It's like I'm not interested.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just,
yeah, yeah.
you know,
Then
we don't.
that brings up this conflict that he wants engagement and I should be giving him engagement, or you know, why does he always want engagement from me? Why can't he just be happy to be quiet as well? Or variations of that kind of thing. Yeah, so there is definitely a sense of loss on your part
Yeah,
if the the impetus for him to take you to a place you don't want to be seems to be, yeah.
yeah. You know, there's like, if we're not going to have a, you know, conversation that really is relevant to me. It's like, if we were to sit there, he would talk about, you know, what's on the calendar for this week, you know, and things like that. And it's like, who cares, you know? I don't know. I have trouble engaging in kind of what I consider just kind of menial conversation.
Yeah, yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah. So,
Can I ask a question?
yes, of course.
Why why are you with him again? What is
Well,
why are you still in a relationship with him?
well, my husband is not physically well, and he's 81, and I'm not going to, you know, walk out on him.
Ah, so the reason
Possibility.
you are with him is
Um, simply because I made a vow to be here with him. I
You,
gave my
would-
word I
you
would
could
be
say
here for him.
duty.
okay.
I don't know if I'd call it duty. I'd call it my word. My word means something.
Hmm, hmm.
I value the you can, if I give my word to something, you can count on it. That's important to me.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I'm not going to walk out on him. He can't care for himself fully. He doesn't drive anymore. He's got a million different illnesses going on. And he's not particularly interested in any kind of, bringing things into conscious awareness. It's not, no, he's not interested.
Obvious thing, yeah, yeah. Look, I get that, and in that way, there's a distinct parallel to my situation, because my wife thinks. I actually said this to her the other day. I said, you think this is a load of shit, don't you? And she said, no, I don't actually, but that's what I've been saying for a long time. But she's not engaged in it. That's true. And so I have a similar kind of situation to you in terms of the physical thing. So what we engage with is what's on the calendar for this week, so to speak. And I just see that as what life's offering me. It's like it's there in front of me to be done, so I do it. It's not like there's no choice. There's no decisions to be made. There's just whatever turns up in front of me gets done. Um, that sounds fairly casual, but it's a huge thing. It's a really huge thing. It has to do with not having control. But at almost at a practical level, what I'm saying is that I give life the job of controlling what needs to be done.
Yeah, for sure.
And I just recognize that by it being in front of me there to be done, kind of thing.
And that's true for me
So if
as well.
she wants to talk about what's something totally trivial, that's fine. It just happens. Yeah.
It's true for me as well that I trust, like I said, I trust life, and this is what life has given me here, right? And so I trust that, but there's the trying to reconcile the I guess what it is again is just being with and the letting go of, there's a part of me that, would be right now in a foreign country for the month of February. Let's get out of US, let's just go someplace where it's sunny. It's been so cold here on the East Coast. It's been single digits. There's been snow on the ground for a month. And it's like, and I love to travel. I can't do that. And so there's a certain amount of like having to be with,
I get
okay,
that. I get that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
that's what,
I have things like, do you know what? I'd really love to go to Thailand with Marius and run a retreat there for everybody to come, and if I really extend that, I want to have so much money that I can pay their way there, and they don't have to pay me any money to come to a retreat for a month. Now that would be I just love that. That would just be so right. But obviously, it's a story. My circumstances aren't going to allow that to happen at the moment,
yeah,
right? So then,
yeah.
what about this one? This is something that comes from me, and I think, you know what? I'll wait till my wife dies, then I'll do that. Right now, I might wait forever, and I might die before she dies. So I recognise that it's just a story, but I don't feel bad about those stories. They're just stories, and they're not much different to reading Peter Pan, right? That's a story too.
But
Yeah.
I see I have to make room for at my table, and I have to make room for that part of me that is the adventurer, that is the world traveler, and I need to give her what she needs also, in addition to caring for my husband. I need to make room for her because she is suffering because she's not able to spread her wings and express that. So I can do that in other ways, and I need to honor that. And I think that's what he is.
Yeah, that's true, right? True. But let's reframe it slightly. She's not suffering because she can't do that. She's suffering because she feels restricted about that.
Yes.
She's suffering because of her attitude towards that rather than the actual thing.
Okay, say that again. She's suffering because of the attitude rather than the actual thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not that she can't go to a sunny climb right now, right? It's that she thinks she should be able to.
Oh, yes, that's right. That's right. And he's holding her back.
Yes, that's part of the story. Yes.
No, I disagree. I have to speak.
Yes, come and jump in. I'm happy.
He's not holding you back anything.
No, that's the story.
No, that's you vote. You choose to be there. So that's your choice. You choose to be there. So anytime you are annoyed by him, remember, ah yes, I chose this. Great. Thank you.
Yes.
And in that way you just the blame and the attack and the resentment can't arise toward another person.
Right.
Because he's not causing you anything. If you want to be free, just walk out the house, take your car, and go spread your wings. I mean, why not? Not because you said you make a vow, so that's your choice. Has nothing to do with him. That's your. All of this is on you. So
yes, and the glitch
with this in mind, you don't have to speak about him anymore because it's only you now.
Yes. Very good. And I need something to, honestly, I need a little something here to be able to remind myself in the moment, because this is such an ingrained kind of pattern. So I'm just wondering, I mean, could I just say it has nothing to do with him? Because there's a momentum here with this, and I don't think that when I'm in the midst of it, I will remember.
It doesn't matter. In the beginning, that may be the way it is. And so every time you get in that, you will come out of it. And at that moment that you recognize that I was in that, is that moment to celebrate. And then those moments will come quicker and happen more frequently and so on. So you will. It's just a case of you untraining a habit kind of thing. Yeah.
I just want to point out, Irene, and this might be glaringly obvious to you, but I'm going to say it anyways, and that is that this is the same energy as the seeking energy. You're basically not accepting the moment. You're wanting something else that isn't here. So with that in mind, you're familiar with that energy. Look at it from that perspective, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. That's very clear.
I would add to that I could come up with the exact same story as you're saying, and I'm single. I would just change it and I'd say I don't have a partner to do it with. Because I have the same story running, all the reasons why I don't do this or that. And I did the same thing when I was married.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it feels now like cut that cord of thinking that it's anything external, and that it's right here.
It's just
right now. I think one very good mantra is no one can make you feel anything. No one. If someone enters the room and you feel something, and you say it's because this person, it is maybe you're not with your teacher entering and you feel peace, and has nothing to do with the teacher. Yeah.
I know this.
Just as when you feel resentment or you lose your peace when someone enters the room, it has nothing to do with the other person. Everything is between you and yourself. That's it.
Yeah.
There is
Yeah. Very good. Yep.
So let's extend that a little bit. So when David was saying you chose that, right? I say life organized it for you, right? Just as an alternative way to say that it wasn't you that was choosing it; it just happened that way, right? And then you can extend that, and this is something that I do. Life will give you what you need at the moment. I know this sounds very theoretical, but there's a kind of a feeling that goes along with that. Life is giving you the opportunity to discover something deeper about yourself that you wouldn't if these circumstances weren't there. Right, so it's not just a case of dealing with something that's a bit icky. It's a case of recognizing the actual positive opportunity that life has given you with this situation. And until you learn the lesson, it will stay there. And when the lesson is learned, it will change. Sounds woo-wooish, but yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true in my experience. Yeah. Great. Thank you, everyone. That was very helpful. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, now we can all go home. Everybody's in a good place. Oh, I've got to thank you guys. I just love this. It just feels so good. Mm. And I get the feeling when I sigh and I just experience this expanding heart, it's like I recognize that that's a foundation upon which this being is built. Yeah. There's something fundamental about that love that's just in everything. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll call it quits for the day, eh? Happy to do that. Anybody else wants to bring something up? Go for it. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Vince.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, iPhone
Night
7.
night.